May I speak to you in the name of God, who is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Amen.
I was never really good at sports growing up. That's being incredibly generous. Kind of thankful my parents and my aunt aren't here this morning because they could share some stories about just how bad I was. I was never really interested in competition, so I had no drive to do well or get better. But I always wanted to play soccer and t-ball and baseball, no matter how bad I was, because I wanted to be on the team. I wanted to be with the people. But I was not competitive. As I said, there was just no drive to become good at soccer, at t-ball, at baseball. So I didn't. Until high school, when I started playing Ultimate Frisbee after school. There's actually a team in the town now, but at that point it was just a bunch of us at the school getting together and playing on our own, not anything organized. And I discovered there are some sports I'm good at. There are some things I can do. And it wasn't competitive. It was just a bunch of us getting together and playing, and we didn't really even keep score, so it was great for me. I started playing when I went to URI, and it was more organized. I discovered that there are, in fact, more than 2 rules about not moving and having to throw the disc. But it was still all right for me. I got better at what I was doing, and the thing about competition was tempered because part of Ultimate Frisbee is that the whole point of the game is to go and enjoy it. So even at those organized tournaments when there would be rankings and winners and losers, there was always an award at the end of the tournament for this team that exemplified the spirit of the game the most. The point over and beyond, which was often forgotten, winning, was to have fun and enjoy it. And that's why they had that Spirit of the Game award for the team that best exemplified it. URI never won it, and I'm going to get to why in a minute. So as you said, there were more rules than I had figured out as I was playing pickup games in high school. But with these rules, even in these organized tournaments, there were no referees. It's a self-governed game. The rules are there just to help the game along and keep us from playing dirty because we get too competitive. But keep the game going along with the spirit of the game. To help us just play and enjoy it without worrying too much. To help just guide. But of course, at these tournaments, there were always people who were sticklers about those rules, who were focused too much about those rules and would call every little foul, even if it was detracting from the rest of the game. We were guilty of it on our team. Like I said, at one of our practices, if you're marking the person throwing and you touch their hand while they still had the disc in their hand, and you touch their hand while they still have the disc in their hand, it's a foul. My roommate in a practice hit my hand, releasing the disc, dislocated my shoulder, and then called a foul on me. So we were guilty of sticking to the rules too. But at all the tournaments, there was always at least one team who was really bad about it, and we had a couple teammates who just didn't buy into that at all, which is why I said we never won the Spirit of the Game award at the end of the tournament, because they would let it be known to the other team what they thought about them in words that I will not say in front of my daughter, or in this setting. We weren't doing what we were supposed to be doing by reacting that way, but those people also by sticking to those rules, by making it about those rules and being technically appropriate now, technically following them to the letter, we're also missing the point. And that's what Jesus is getting at in today's gospel lesson, right? The disciples are out there rolling wheat in their hands and getting a little bit of a snack. And then he heals someone's hands, and it's all on a Sabbath. I can't look at both, but okay? You can stand here, but that's it. Healing someone's hand on the Sabbath. Both of those things technically weren't allowed. But as Jesus says, the Sabbath was created for humankind, not humankind for the Sabbath. If you focus too much on not touching the thrower's hands to the point that even if they dislocate your shoulder, they can call a foul on you, or call those fouls when they don't matter and detract from the game, you're missing the point of the game. You're missing the spirit of the game. And that's what Jesus is getting at. It's not about the rules. It's about the spirit of the game. Another example of how the law was supposed to work, which might make more sense to you guys, is think of gardening and think of a trellis, right? When you have a rose bush, you need to put something there for it to grow up. Alice, I might be saying things wrong, but I'm assuming I'm right. I know a lot more about ultimate frisbee than gardening. But you have a trellis to help support that bush, help it grow up the way it's supposed to be, so it's not just some tangled mass on the ground, but so that it grows and fully shows off the beauty that it holds, fully shows off the potential that it has. If you don't have the trellis, I'm assuming a overgrown mass on the ground that might look nice, but not as nice as it could. And if you focus too much on the trellis, if you're always trimming back so you can see the beautiful woodwork, or so you can always touch up the paint or do whatever, you're never going to let the rose bush grow to what it can be. That's what Jesus is getting at in today's gospel. The law is there to guide us, to help us grow to who we're supposed to be, to help us become what we can be, to help us really live into the spirit of this game. When we focus too much on it, like the Pharisees were at that time, we're missing the point. We're not living into the spirit of the game. We're not letting that rose bush grow and flourish the way it would if we put the law as it's supposed to be. It's not to say that the law isn't important, but that it's not what brings us life. It's not what the point is. The point is the beauty of that rose bush growing and flourishing and showing forth that beauty. Not how nice of a trellis you have and how perfectly set up it is and what perfect conditions it is in, but what it allows to grow. The rules in Ultimate aren't about sticking to them exactly, but what it allows you to do in that time. How much fun and enjoyment you're allowed to have in that game, in that allotted time. The rules are important, though. The trellis is important. The Pharisees were real sticklers about the Sabbath at this time. I was thinking about it earlier this week. Sabbath is probably the hardest of the commandments for us to keep now, probably for them as well. I'm hoping if I polled and said how many of us have committed murder in the past week, none of us would raise our hands. Lying and stealing, same thing. How many of you did any work yesterday? Yeah, I bet we would all raise our hands. The Sabbath is Saturday, remember? We're not good at sticking to that one. So the Pharisees, it's understandable how strict they got about it and how they lost sight of what it was meant to do because they were trying to honor it so much and it's so difficult to do. But God gave us that rule for a reason. You know, the other ones are easy to see, but this one, It's not just some arbitrary thing he decided, but we need that time. We need to step back. We need to take a breath and refresh ourselves. If we are to truly join in with him doing the work that he left us, if we are truly to live Christ-like lives, we need that space. We need to be able to take a step back and breathe. Now, we can't, in that space, refuse to help people when they need it. That's what the Pharisees were doing. That's where they went wrong. It was becoming more about following the rules, following the law, than what the law was supposed to give to us. When we have that time, when we're able to take that space and take a breath, we're more refreshed, we're more strengthened, we're more invigorated when we go out doing the work that Jesus has left us. If we're just always going and doing, when we're out there, when we're trying to do his work, trying to build his kingdom, it's going to show that we're just haggard, that we're not really in it as much as we could be. The Sabbath is important, but we need to remember that it was created for our benefit, not us for it. That's where the Pharisees went wrong. That's where my roommate Pat went wrong when he dislocated my shoulder. And that's where we go wrong when we focus too much on our trellises and not so much on what those trellises are allowing to grow. Becca? The law is important, but it doesn't bring us life. The law is beneficial to us, but it doesn't make us more like Christ. Following him, living and loving as he lived and loved is what we're supposed to do. The law helps to guide us into that. But loving God, loving our neighbors, walking the path that he set for us, that's what it's about. We are definitely not as much of sticklers as they were about the Sabbath back then. But we've created our own rules in other places and other ways that we probably stick to just the same. The example about ultimate I began with. We need to recognize those places and see where we're missing the point. See where we're focusing too much on the rules and not enough on the spirit of the game. That's what the gospel message is for us today. We need to live into the spirit of the game. And that spirit, Jesus tells us, is the spirit of love. Loving God, loving our neighbor. Loving with no questions asked. Loving completely. Loving unconditionally. Amen.